you for joining us. I'm Terry Kimball, and I'm the President and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber of Commerce. And I would like to welcome all of you to the 2021 Meet the Elected Officials event and our official release of our 2021 How We Stand legislative agenda. I love saying 2021. All right, despite the truth of what's happened over the past year, we are honored to host this year's Meet the Elected Officials program virtually. And we're excited to have the opportunity to hear from many of our local elected officials and our community leaders this morning. And I just want to thank each of you for joining us and taking the time to come and meet with our contingency. The Chandler Chamber thanks all of you for your service, and we look forward to hearing updates from you later. Today's virtual program will be recorded, and the recording will be on our website later today. Additionally, all of the registered attendees that have joined us will receive an email link to the recording. We do ask that if you have questions for our speakers, we have a chat box right at the bottom of your screen. So please go ahead and put your questions for the panelists in the chat box, and we will address those as they come in and speak to you today. And as long as time permits, because we have an absolutely full agenda this morning. Before we begin today's program, I'd like to take a moment to address the state of our nation. Our hearts go out to all who have been impacted by the incidents that have taken place this past week. It is important now more than ever for our local, state, and federal representation to move our nation forward and continue to be strong leaders. And yes, please, we need to continue to help business and commerce and keep our community growing. We are here today to hear updates from our elected officials, and we ask for complete respect of our leaders, and we will not tolerate any display of hate throughout this program. So even in your questions in the chat below, let's be kind and be tolerant. So let's go ahead and get started. As a chamber, we represent the voice of our business community. We have not only the opportunity, but the responsibility to collectively influence issues that impact our day-to-day business operations, as well as the future of our community. Chandler has been and remains an example of a well-governed city to the rest of Arizona and to our country. We have also had excellent representation from our federal and state levels, and we are extremely grateful for this leadership and dedication to public service. This morning's event is made possible through the support of our dedicated sponsors. Our brown sponsors are Air Products and Chemicals, Catalyst Computer Technologies, Dignity Health Chandler Regional Medical Center, Salt River Project, and Southwest Airlines. Our turquoise sponsors are Intel, Mary Contreras State Farm, Southwest Gas, and Wells Fargo. Thank you to these companies for your leadership in supporting good public policy, not only in Chandler, but across our state. I'd also like to recognize our board of directors. I have a tremendous group of leaders here in our community. And a complete list of this year's board of directors can be found on our website, as well as in this year's How We Stand legislative agenda. In fact, while we have been, you should have received an email with our legislative agenda book as we start today's program. Now I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our public policy co-chairs. We have Elin Cruz with Salt River Project, and I would be remiss if I didn't also acknowledge Rick Human from CMA. And Rick was our chair from last year, who was very instrumental in also helping to put this agenda together. And then John Rapar. John Rapar was our How We Stand chair, and he is a concerned citizen here in our community and a great supporter of the chamber. Thank you for all your hard work and dedication to the chamber throughout the year. And a full listing of our contributors and those people who have given us input on this How We Stand booklet can be found in the back of the electronic book that you would have just received. Public policy advocacy is one of the areas where, as a chamber, we affect some of the most important and lasting change. The chamber continues to stay involved throughout each legislative session, considerably increasing our advocacy and presence at the local, state, and federal levels. To clearly communicate our positions on the various complex policy, our chamber has developed our How We Stand legislative agenda. This book has been previously recognized at a national level for its excellence, and we are proud to present it to you today. It is created by a knowledgeable group of volunteers, business volunteers, working really diligently through the Chamber's Policy Impact Committee, identifying those issues and preparing the positions contained in this publication. We offer this guide to our legislators, city leaders, membership, and to the public for use throughout the coming year. Electronic copy is again found, and you should have received that through an email, but it can also be found on our website. And we invite you to read through this extensive document and contact if you should have any questions. So at this point, there are a couple of key points that I would really like you to focus on. Some of the key issues that Chandler is focusing on this year is, number one, lowering the cost of doing business and increasing private sector jobs. Tax policy should provide a consistent environment and must enhance the business environment to promote job growth, diversification, business expansion through incentives and innovative models. Future emerging technologies, regulations must not place undue harm on our current business environment. Education is a top priority to us here at the Chandler Chamber as well. Having an innovative, competitive P20 education system from public, charter, private, and online learning models with stable and equitable funding is essential. We need a skilled and educated workforce for continued innovation and automation. Career pathways for students, workers is essential in filling the skills gap, retaining talent, and building the pipelines in alignment with our businesses. Lifelong learning and diversification in learning models is also essential to our businesses. Effective and efficient government. Streamlined, transparent, and improved government processes. And this goes across all sectors of government. Responsible legislative administrative reforms for effectiveness of our Arizona Unemployment Insurance Program that reduce the cost of business. State unemployment insurance is paid by the employer and should create a bridge to further employment, not an incentive to remain unemployed. Employers' rights are important to us here at the Chandler Chamber and to maintain Arizona's status to right to work and employment at will state. This is a huge economic development tool when we are recruiting companies to come to Arizona. Business liability is a huge concern to our business community as we move forward. Expedited passage of business liability protection from lawsuits specifically related to this unprecedented COVID-19 outbreak has got to pass to help businesses and schools as we continue to move forward. Transportation and infrastructure is another key element for our Chandler business community. Securing our statutory authority from the Arizona Legislature to allow reauthorization of the Regional Transportation Plan. These key bullet points are just a few of the really important items that we see here and are important to the Chandler business community. At this time, I would like to introduce our 2021 chair of the board, Jane Poston from J2 Media. And she is here to introduce our next speakers. Jane, congratulations.
Well, thank you, Terry, and good morning, everybody. Thanks again for joining us here today. So we'll get right to it. It is my pleasure to introduce first thing this morning, the chair of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Jack Sellers. But I do want to note a couple of items about Chair Sellers that all of you are getting first. He was just elected the chair of the board this week. So Supervisor Sellers, congratulations on that chair position. We're really glad to have you in that role. And then another item, I would just like to take this opportunity to personally thank you on behalf of the Chandler Chamber Board of Directors for all the work that you did with the Chandler Chamber. And I know there were many calls to Terry working on this, listening to that chamber feedback and working to make those CARES grants accessible to businesses, of course, both here in Chandler and throughout the county. So thank you again for all of your hard work during this tough time for businesses and the business community. We really appreciate that. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Sellers with an update.
Okay, thank you. And first of all, I'll apologize because I have to get off the meeting at 8:30. I have a Maricopa County meeting that I have to attend. So I'll be brief this morning. I think that, if anyone wants to find out what my priorities are for the coming year, you can go to the Maricopa County website and see my chairman's speech that I gave on Wednesday. It really, I think, encapsulates the things that I feel are most important for the coming year. And, the past year, as everyone knows, has been very, very difficult. And in fact, the outgoing chair, Chairman Hickman, someone said to him, "Thank you so much for your leadership during one of the two toughest years in Maricopa County history." And he said, "Well, thank you so much. What is the other one?" And he said, 2021. So we aren't out of this yet. We still have a lot of things to do. I think everyone knows that, county public health is very, very involved with the governor's office in trying to make the distribution of this vaccine as efficient as possible. It really is one of the most important things that we're doing right now to try to get our economy back on track. So, we really need to get this pandemic under control. And so we're working every day on that. And in fact, that's the meeting I'm attending at 8:30 this morning is an update on that. So the other thing that I know is on everybody's mind is elections. Maricopa County's Board of Supervisors are more anxious than anybody to restore the integrity or the confidence that people have in our elections. And many, many experts have said the elections that we did in Maricopa County this past year are some of the finest ever done anywhere. But with all the noise and all the challenges, we know that there are a lot of people that really still have some major questions, and we're going to address those and hopefully restore confidence among the average voters. We know there are people that will never be satisfied with the answers we give, but certainly that's going to be a major goal of mine going forward this year. And just so everyone knows, just this morning, Dominion filed a $1.3 billion libel suit against Sidney Powell. So, hopefully we can get past this because we have more important things to focus on. And to that point, Maricopa County is the fastest growing county and the fourth largest county in the United States. And one of my biggest concerns is that, our leaders 20 years ago had a good plan that put us in this position today. Unless we have a plan for our future now, the lifestyle that we're enjoying today is not sustainable with this continued growth. So we really, and in fact, I had a call yesterday from the Arizona Republic asking me if I was concerned about the threats against the Board of Supervisors. And I said, perhaps not as much as I should be, but I have people looking out for me that are concerned about that. And my focus has to be on doing my job. And my job is to try to keep us in a position where we can sustain our lifestyle while we grow, because this is a great place. And so that really is my focus, my concentration. To that point, I have a meeting later today with a group of East Valley transportation uh, uh, experts that includes Supervisor Goodman from Pinal County. I think everybody knows that Gateway Airport with Skybridge is a game changer for our region. And we really don't currently have the infrastructure to support what's going to be happening out at that airport. So the group I'm meeting with this afternoon will be talking about things like that. But again, to that point, my chief of staff and I are going to be busy soon setting up meetings with all the mayors and city and town managers in my district to talk to them about the needs for us as we grow, including infrastructure, because we really want to ensure that we're hearing from everybody and understand what's most important to the citizens in our district. So anyway, with that, I'm looking forward to getting together with you soon when we all have more time, so I can go into a lot more detail and hopefully give you a lot more detail on how we've handled all the election stuff and what the real answers are to that. I think everyone in your meeting knows that I stay in touch with this group. I think this is one of the most important groups that I deal with in my district. Great way for me to be able to communicate with all of you. And I'll look forward to doing that soon and answering all your questions then. So if there's anything anybody would like to ask me this morning quickly, I'm happy to answer that. But I know this is really, really brief.
Well, thank you so much for your comments. I know you do have another meeting. Terry, were there any comments in the chat that need to be
No,
answered?
just people are really thanking you for your efforts, Jack, and congratulations on being named as chair. So Jane, back to you to introduce our mayor.
All right, thanks again for the update. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our City of Chandler Mayor, Kevin Hartke. And a little about Mayor Hartke. He began his term as mayor in January of 2019. He previously served 9 years on city council, first as interim council member, and then he was elected to consecutive 4-year terms. So he also served as vice mayor twice. Welcome, Mayor Hartke. Looking forward to hearing from you today.
Well, thank you, Jane. Thank you, Terry. Jack, good to see you and everyone else on here. I'm certainly grateful to have the opportunity just to talk to you all, even though we're virtual this year as we do everything else. 2020 has been quite the year, and I do want to thank my council and those who are stepping down as well for working together well this year and seeing how we can meet the challenges best. We did face a lot of interesting, unparalleled challenges, as did every community. We came together to find new ways to conduct business and to keep our community safe and thriving as well. And through innovation and advocacy, we're able to provide a lot of necessary resources and funding to residences. We enjoyed the partnerships that we forged, even new ones with the chamber to address some opportunities to meet the needs in our community. We were a bit surprised. Our economic base in Chandler is very well diversified, and with that base and our unique economy, revenues were higher than we anticipated. We really clamped down in the middle, at the beginning of this pandemic, and really to anticipate a lot of shortfalls, but we actually came in higher than expected. And with our fiscally conservative nature on the council, the impacts of COVID-19 on our budget were not as significant as we initially anticipated. And throughout 2020, we continued to welcome new businesses. We broke ground on new developments. And while ribbon cutting certainly had a new look and totally different look, we enjoyed several of those in partnership with the chamber, as well as many just did their own. And we launched major initiatives to support our local economy throughout the year. Throughout this year, we were recognized as a top place to live, to work, to play. And we're even rated one of the top cities to quarantine in, which I found quite humorous. Chandler will continue to be a solutions-oriented community that provides a variety of services at a high level and a cost-effective way, focusing on fiscal sustainability, economic development, neighborhoods, transportation, land use planning, public safety, and water and environmental sustainability. As I look ahead this year, we've got a number of things in the queue that will be unfolding. In January, we're starting a civic group, CIVIC, that an acronym for basically getting people engaged more in government and understanding how the city works. I will continue to be a transportation advocate and serving with MAG on the Transportation Policy Committee, the MAG General Committee, the Exec Committee, and as we continue to develop the Prop 400 extension, it's extremely important that we make sure that Chandler is not a donor city to the rest of the county here. It's one of my priorities. We initiated a bond committee. I want to thank you, Jane, for serving on that and many others across our community. The process has gone very well, and we'll be getting an update at the end of this month concerning the bond committee recommendations that we'll be looking at later. We'll be establishing a council retreat with our two brand new council members that I have the privilege of working with soon and hearing from sooner to set policy and vision for the next several years. And we'll continue to bring great service and value to our residents and businesses at a very great cost of service. I'm excited about our community opening up once again, and I'm making no predictions, but I think we're all eager and anxious to be able to enjoy the things and the networking that we have come to appreciate, particularly in their absence. And I look forward to continuing to work with the Chamber. I love the Chamber and our great relationships. I look forward to working with our new council, our legislators, and our community to continue the momentum for job creation in Chandler, making sure that our residents can continue to enjoy a high quality and taking a solutions-oriented approach to providing a high level of service to all of our constituents. So thank you.
All right, and thank you, Mayor, for being here today. So next, we are pleased to have with us Jennings Imel from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So with everything going on in Washington, D.C., obviously, we do appreciate Jennings taking time from his very busy schedule to join us. And so a little background about him: Jennings Imel is the director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Western Regional Office. And before joining the U.S. Chamber staff in 2013, Jennings worked in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Association of Former Members of Congress and at the public affairs firm of Mercury, Clark, and Weinstock. Prior to moving to DC, Jennings worked in the California State Assembly as well. So we are honored to have Jennings here with us to share an update from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Just please feel free to post any questions for Jennings in the chat, and time permitting, we will follow up at the end of his update. So Jennings, thank you, and take it away.
Great, thanks, Jane. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you as always for having me. Thank you to Terry and the Chandler Chamber for everything that you do, and thank you for your many years of partnership and friendship. And I know I may sound like a broken record because I usually start off these presentations with all kinds of thank yous, but we really mean it for sure. You all do an excellent job, obviously, and I think everybody on this call knows and can see that with the legislative agenda that you all put together, how incredibly engaged you are really at every single level of government. And quite frankly, and especially in a year that was as challenging as 2020, we wouldn't have been as successful as we were in getting things done. When you look at obviously the CARES Act and the various changes that took place with the CARES Act, making it better, more responsive for small businesses, of course, making sure that C6s were included, and I'll talk about all of these things later on in the presentation. But there were so many different things that I can point to where business and chambers like the Chandler Chamber really stepped up on behalf of the business community to advocate to members of Congress, the administration, to make sure that those programs were right and were working well for businesses in very, very dire times. So appreciate all that you do, and appreciate you all having me, of course, and I look forward to seeing you in person next year. That being said, I'll kind of move forward. I do have a couple of slides that I've put together. I'll attempt to share my screen now. Hopefully that goes fairly seamlessly. I think we're looking pretty good here for the most part. So I'm gonna kind of touch on a couple of things. Really kind of just doing an election recap, talk about the results obviously from November. Now that kind of the dust has settled in Georgia this week, we have obviously an idea of what the numbers are going to be moving forward in 2021 in both the House and the Senate. So that gives us an idea of kind of what to expect, what the political environment is going to be, and what kind of is within the realm of possibility in the 117th Congress. And then, of course, a lot of the remarks are going to focus on kind of coming together, and that's going to be essential given the divided government that we essentially have, but especially given everything that happened this week, that's going to be more important than ever. And then the fact that most of 2021, at least the first half of 2021, is going to continue to be dominated by the pandemic. Businesses obviously continue to struggle. I will focus a little bit on the bill that passed at the end of last year, the new pandemic relief package that should be assisting small businesses shortly that need it. I'll be happy to talk a little bit about that and potentially answer some questions. Not looking to get too much in the weeds on that because you can go down that rabbit hole a little bit, but definitely I know there's some really important and relevant information for you all, and I'm happy to cover that. So first, just kind of looking at the 2020 federal elections, I'll just kind of do a really quick review, really in several different buckets. First, looking at the White House, of course, we all know the results of the election. I think some of the surprising takeaways, or probably the most surprising takeaway, just kind of looking state by state, was what happened obviously in your state, in Arizona, and then in Georgia, both of those states flipping to Biden. I think that aligns with two general trends that we saw that really accounted for Biden's victory at the end of the day. One was that President Trump continues to not be very popular in suburban areas throughout the country. And that was a trend that we saw that was quite profound in 2018 in the midterm elections when Democrats took the House. And that was a lot of that had to do, quite frankly, with major pickups in suburban regions across the country. And I think that when you look at the suburban growth that we've seen, particularly in states of Arizona and Georgia, as you all know, and places like Chandler, and the fact that those suburban areas have not been friendly to President Trump, I think a lot of that obviously has to do with the end result that we saw in both Arizona and Georgia, ultimately going to Biden by very narrow margins. The other general trend that we saw at the presidential level is really kind of looking at those blue wall states, those former blue wall states that President Trump took in 2016, namely Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that the enthusiasm for President Trump was depressed. So if you look at a lot of the rural ex-urban areas, the counties where President Trump did really well and had very wide margins of victory in 2016, while he still won most of those areas in 2020, the margins were significantly smaller in some cases than they were in 2016. And that ultimately, I think, made the difference in determining the outcome of those three states. As you all remember, of course, he won all three of those states by a combined total of just a few tens of thousands of votes. So those are really kind of the five integral states that made the difference in the electoral college outcome. And there we have 306-232 victory for incoming president now, Joe Biden. The other kind of bucket to look at when you look at the Senate and the House, I think Republicans overall had a pretty good night, even though President Trump didn't have a great night. I think by and large, Republicans both in the Senate and the House could have felt pretty good about the results. When looking back in September, October, the weeks leading up to the election, a lot of the forecasters were saying that Democrats were favorites, slight favorites, maybe even more than slight favorites to take over the Senate, needing only to pick up 3 or 4 seats. The three major seats that folks were kind of focused on the Senate side were Susan Collins in Maine, Tom Tillis in North Carolina, and Joni Ernst in Iowa. Those three folks felt would kind of determine the ultimate balance of power. Kind of the assumption going into kind of the last couple of months into the campaign were that Arizona with Martha McSally, Cory Gardner, and Colorado were probably going to be losses for Republicans, and Republicans would pick up Alabama with Doug Jones being the Democrat there. Those things obviously happened, but then those other three races that I mentioned in Maine, North Carolina, Iowa, really integral in determining what the balance of power would be. And all three of those Republican incumbents won. Tom Tillis won by 2 points, very close race in North Carolina, but outperformed the president there. The other two races were really surprising in that Joni Ernst had, I think it was a 6-point victory in Iowa. That was a lot larger than most folks had predicted. And the same thing definitely goes for Susan Collins, who I believe ended up with a 9-point victory. Most folks throughout 2020 had considered her to be a significant underdog. The feeling was that she was really going to have a very difficult time winning that race. Not only did she win it, but she won it by a huge margin. And I think what's interesting to highlight and worth highlighting is the fact that she has really kind of been the embodiment of bipartisanship as one of the most bipartisan members of Congress throughout her tenure. And it's nice to see that the voters in Maine rewarded her for that bipartisanship in a time when bipartisanship has kind of become a 4-letter word in so many different places. So that was really good to see. Republicans were in good position on election night with 50 to 48 margin. Of course, those two runoffs in Georgia, even Perdue had a much better night on November 3rd than he did this week, where he outperformed President Trump and came just short of the 50% threshold that he would have needed to avoid the runoff this week in Georgia. We all know how those races ultimately played out. A lot of that probably had to do with other things that were going on in the intervening 2 months. But a 50-50 split, I think, is pretty good overall for Republicans, especially considering what we were hearing in parts of September and October. And so essentially what we have there is divided government, even though on paper, Democrats are going to have the majority in the Senate. Well, it's really not going to feel like that with the 50-50 split. On the House side, once again, Republicans had a really good night. Most forecasters were saying Republicans would lose anywhere between 5 and 15 seats, maybe even 20 seats on a bad night. That ultimately did not come to fruition. As a matter of fact, they picked up more than probably about 11 or 12 seats. There's still one seat that's outstanding in New York 22, where former Congresswoman Tenney, the Republican, has, I believe, a 29 vote lead over Congressman Brindisi. And so what we have there is a very narrow margin now for Democrats. It's going to make life a little bit more difficult for Speaker Pelosi moving forward. It's in fact one of the narrowest majorities that we've seen in the House in a number of decades, but I think ultimately a good night for Republicans on the House side. When you look at the state side of things, state legislative chambers, there was a lot of money poured into some of those races, with Democrats hoping that they would pick up, very optimistic that they would pick up several state legislative houses around the country. That ultimately did not happen. As a matter of fact, Republicans picked up 2 legislative houses. Both of them were in the state of New Hampshire. So now the split is 61 to 37 in favor of Republicans. And then on the governorship side of things as well, Republicans were able to pick up the state of Montana. So now we have a 27 to 23 split in favor of Republicans. And of course, that's going to bode well for them, particularly in a census year where they're going to be able to, in most states, not in Arizona, but most states, draw legislative lines that are going to be in place for the next decade. So as I mentioned, with the very split Senate 50-50, the House with a very, very narrow majority in favor of Democrats, what we essentially have is divided government. Even though, like I mentioned, on paper, it says that Democrats have unified control of Congress in Washington, D.C. That's not really how it's going to feel. It very much is going to be kind of, we're going to have divided government, and it's going to necessitate folks coming together, Republicans and Democrats, to meet in the middle and to get things done if we're going to hope to have a constructive 2021. And, we've been focused at the U.S. Chamber for a number of years now, really on rebuilding the middle, rebuilding the governing middle. This is kind of a theme that I've hit on previous presentations here at the Chandler Chamber. And as I mentioned, it's been going for a long time now. And it really kind of culminated, I think, in the aftermath of the 2018 midterm elections, where we decided to focus more on really making sure we're building those relationships with incoming moderate Democrat freshmen also building relationships, strengthening relationships with centrist Republicans and backing up those centrist Republicans. And when I think of moderate Democrats, that are in the House, and especially freshmen, I think of folks like Greg Stanton there in Arizona 9, Congressman Tom O'Halloran, and then of course on the Senate side, Senator Kirsten Sinema, of course, has been a longtime friend of the U.S. Chamber, somebody that we've worked really well with, and we're hoping to establish the same kind of partnership and relationship with Senator Kelly as well. But really, as 2018 was kind of a catalyst year for us to really get this work underway, and that's why we changed our how they voted scorecard, which is kind of the annual legislative scorecard that we put out that kind of looks at members' votes on critical issues that matter to the business community. We changed the format and the formula that we were using for putting those together in 2019, and we wanted to include two new components. First, legislative leadership, and then the second, bipartisanship, as a way to kind of incentivize bipartisanship. So not just looking at the actual votes themselves that are coming to the House or Senate floor, but kind of looking behind the curtain and seeing how members of Congress are truly interacting with one another, what issues are getting behind, and how they're interacting with members of the opposite party. And so 2019 was the first year that we rolled that out. It was tremendously successful. We identified more than 30 House Democrats that we could get behind and that had strong records with us that we could endorse. And many of those folks won in 2020. And then same thing too for folks on the Republican side of the aisle, where we were able to show our strong support for those folks that were kind of willing to meet in the middle and get things done on behalf of the business community and the country in general. And this is going to be work that we're going to have to continue into 2021, given the fact that we have divided government, of course, but then also given what happened this week. I think that just underscores the need to really come together and for the business community to work to make sure that that our democratic institutions, that they're respected, and trying to find ways and really think deeply about how we can try to mend some of these divisions that we've seen. I think, that event that happened on Wednesday didn't come out of nowhere. It wasn't in a vacuum. This is something that it's quite frankly a symptom of larger, deeper problems that have been festering in our society and in our politics for a number of years now. And I think that positions the business community to really think deeply about how we can work to engage, kind of the society at large to try to bolster those institutions that are so critical to the functioning of our democracy. And our U.S. Chamber CEO, Tom Donahue, put out a couple of statements on Wednesday and on Thursday. And I put a portion of Thursday's statement down there at the bottom. I'll just read it aloud as well. As we have been saying for years, we need responsible and resolved governing to lead our nation. We also must strengthen the structures of our democracy. The business community must and will play a critical role in supporting the rule of law, fortifying democratic norms, and restoring trust in our institutions. And I think that's something that we're going to be focused on. Our CEO, Tom Donahue, is going to talk at length probably about this next week on Tuesday, January 12th at our annual State of American Business. But this is a theme that is not only going to be important for us, but I think for chambers really at all levels, state level, local level, to begin to work with our elected officials and making sure that we're doing everything that we can to bring folks together in the middle and providing cover too when it's necessary for members that are taking very difficult votes, maybe even if it's against the leadership of their own party. We need to be able to make sure that we have their back and show them that. Along those lines, when we're talking about kind of coming to the middle, looking into 2021 and the 117th Congress, I think really the center of gravity is going to be with two groups in particular on the House and Senate side. The House side, the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a group of about 24 House Republicans and 24 House Democrats that have worked really well together and pushing kind of more moderate proposals that could actually pass both legislative bodies. And the same thing with the Gang of Eight, that kind of new revised Gang of Eight. A lot of you probably recall the original Gang of Eight from 2013 that attempted to push immigration reform. We now have a new Gang of Eight that really played an integral role in getting this latest pandemic relief package across the finish line. Same thing for the Problem Solvers Caucus group. Those two groups did a lot to push leadership of both Republican and Senate, Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi, to get together, get in the same room, and get a deal done on COVID before the end of the year. And without folks in the middle pushing leadership, that probably doesn't happen. So I think we're going to continue to have to look to those folks in 2021 if we're going to try to get things done. And speaking of 2021, just really quickly, some of the issues that we're anticipating to see. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I do think that the first half, at least, of the year is going to be dominated by the pandemic as we continue to get the vaccines rolled out, and as businesses continue, obviously, to struggle, and the economy continues to be in bad shape. We saw the numbers from December come in today, that we actually lost jobs in December. I think it was 140,000 jobs. Unemployment rate continues to be steady at around 7%. So this is going to continue to be a very big issue that the Biden administration is going to deal with. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have kind of made it clear that they want to immediately push on the $2,000 stimulus checks. I think that there's a good chance that we're going to see additional COVID relief, particularly more money for state and local governments. President Biden has also kind of made reference to the fact that the most recent package was simply a down payment for additional measures that are to come. And then beyond that, there are some other things just to kind of keep an eye out for. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, just a list of a few things that I was thinking of and that we're kind of preparing for at the U.S. Chamber. HR 1 kind of dealing with elections, Citizens United. That was kind of a major Democrat priority back after they won the House in 2018. Look for that to be revived. Minimum wage, of course, is likely to come up again. The PRO Act, something that's very, very high on our radar. That's the Protecting the Right to Organize Act that kind of bundles a number of pro-labor proposals that are particularly problematic for the business community. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. Section 230, there's been a lot of talk about Section 230. That's the liability protection for platforms that provide content online. Both Republicans and Democrats have problems with Section 230, so there's a good chance that that's going to get a lot of attention this year. Infrastructure, workforce, of course. I highlighted those just because those are two obvious areas where we think Republicans and Democrats can come together, and where we are planning to play a major role. And hopefully we can get something done on infrastructure but before the summer. And then workforce, of course, is going to have to be dealt with, especially given the kind of changes that we've seen to how we're doing work in the aftermath of the pandemic. And then, repeal parts of the TCJA, that's the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the tax reform bill from 2017. We'll see what happens there. It seems like it might be difficult to make significant tax changes as businesses continue to struggle with the pandemic, but I think that that's something to keep on your radar. Other issues to keep an eye on: immigration, trade, kind of long-term. We'll see what happens, but I think that Democrats have kind of made clear that they'd like to move, particularly on immigration. Trade, it'll be interesting to see where the Biden administration goes on that. But those two charts that I included there just kind of indicate where public polling is on both of those issues, that the people generally are supportive of immigration reform, and supportive also of trade, even though the politics of trade have become kind of muddied over the last couple of years. People generally in the United States think of trade as a good thing. So we'll see what the administration decides to do on those two issues, but just things to keep an eye out on. And then lastly, I don't want to really belabor the point on the pandemic, because all of us have gone through so many of these Zoom calls and other meetings dealing with this, but because it is going to be and continue to be such a dominant issue, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the bill and why the bill was needed that we got at the end of the year. Of course, we have seen kind of a K-shaped recovery in the aftermath of that first dip in the end of March and April, when we had kind of those broad closures and most of the economy or large segments of the economy shutting down. And since then, instead of seeing a V-shaped recovery, which we would have liked to have seen, we've seen more of a K-shaped recovery. And that's where certain industries did experience that V-shaped recovery, where they bounced back immediately, tech, retail, software services, things like that. But obviously there are a number of industries, food service, hotel accommodation, travel, entertainment, filming, a number of industries that have yet to get back on their feet and are still suffering quite a bit. And this chart just kind of shows, that breaks it down sector by sector, what industries continue to be in pretty bad shape. This is information from November. And I don't think it's a surprise here to see kind of employment levels that have cratered for some of these industries. And you all see that, of course, in the state of Arizona with strong hospitality sector there. But this is going to continue to be a problem. This kind of underscores why we needed a pandemic relief bill before the end of 2020. And thankfully, we were able to get that done. It was, of course, a very large bill, $900 billion, significantly smaller, though, than what Democrats in the House had originally pushed for, but larger, of course, than what Republicans in the Senate wanted. Kind of a nice middle ground to get this done. A lot of things are in this. I'm not going to spend the rest of my time, which I think I probably only have a couple more minutes on this, but what I think is most relevant for this group is the fact that we do have additional support for small businesses, $284 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program. There's a new program that includes $15 billion in grants for live venues, $20 billion in grants under the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, additional unemployment support, $300 per week up until mid-March. So those are, I think, good things and certainly have been priorities for the business community. A couple of other things, just miscellaneous $82 billion in funding for schools. That was another priority of the U.S. chambers. We have additional money for vaccines, vaccine distribution, testing, all of those things going to be very important, obviously, as we attempt to get kind of past this pandemic and back on track for the economy to reopen. $45 billion for transportation. That includes $15 billion for the airlines and for their employees to bring those employees that were furloughed back on payroll. And then on the Paycheck Protection Program, which I think is kind of the most relevant piece for a lot of the small businesses around the country. Here are just some of the quick highlights. It was reopened, although I haven't checked this morning, but checking last night, I still haven't seen the PPP application form, haven't seen additional guidance from SBA. We're hoping to get that very, very soon. So that'll allow for businesses to actually apply for this program again. But it has been reopened through the end of March. The 501c6 organizations, which are chambers of commerce, trade associations, are included, which is great news. And thank you to the Chandler Chamber for making the push on that issue. There is going to be a second draw for hard hit businesses. So businesses that hadn't taken out a PPP loan could now apply for one. And also businesses that already did get a PPP loan, so long as they used that money, they could also apply for a second draw. There are some eligibility differences, such as you have to show that you've sustained economic harm over the course of 2020. And I'm happy to answer questions about that if there are any, but it's great news that businesses will be able to get a second draw PPP loan moving forward. The forgiveness process is going to be simplified for smaller loans under $150,000. The list of eligible expenses has also been expanded to include things like operational costs, supply chain costs, PPP or PPE, things like that, which I think is gonna give small businesses a little bit more flexibility. The deductibility issue is also addressed in this, so that business expenses will now be tax deductible as they typically would be, even if you're using PPP money for those expenses, which is great news. And then improvements to the ERTC, that's the Employee Retention Tax Credit, that was really bolstered as well, so that businesses can get access to even more money if they keep their employees on payroll. So some really good stuff in there. And I think that's going to be helpful for businesses that continue to attempt to get on their feet and put us in good position to get past this pandemic some point, hopefully by late spring, early summer. A couple of things that aren't in here, of course, state and local aid, the liability shield for businesses and schools. Look for those issues hopefully to be addressed in the beginning of this year by the incoming administration and Congress. And then if you all want more information, we always encourage you to go to our website, uschamber.com/coronavirus. We have guides that you can all use that go over just about every program that's available for you all. So please make sure to check that out. And with that, I'll be happy to take questions. I'll kind of close this up here. I don't know if we have any time for questions, but I'll be happy to answer those, whether they're related to this COVID package or other happenings in Washington, D.C. at the moment.
You know, Jennings, some questions have been coming in and we've been reviewing them, and then I saw you answer them, a few of them as we went along. There are a few for different members of government and different levels of elected officials. So we might get to those as time permits throughout, but we do want to be respectful of everybody's time and go ahead, and we might save some of these for the end as well if we have a little bit, but I do think you answered quite a few of those. And then just for anyone online right now, just to let you know that Jennings' presentation will be available on that chamber website a little later today. So if you want to take a review of that, if there's anything that you'd like to see, we'll be making that available to you. So thank you so much again. We really appreciate you being here and giving us that update. And we are going to move forward. And I am very pleased to introduce one of our 2021 public policy co-chairs. She's from our board of directors, Elin Cruz, with Salt River Project. Elin.
Thank you, Jane. It's an honor to be here this morning. Today, we're joined by several of our elected officials and community leaders representing Chandler. They're here to provide an update on their initiatives and work this year. And first, I'd like to welcome our state senators from Legislative District 17, Senator J.D. Messner. Senator?
Well, it's good to be with you. Good morning. Sorry we couldn't do this in person. So looking forward to perhaps a little sense of normalcy next year. But we have an uncertain legislative session that begins on Monday. Even now, there are rules changes in development that would mean some unprecedented designs in the process, meaning, for instance, we might be doing remote voting, which we've never done before. So obviously trying to be cognizant of what's happening around us with the pandemic. But a couple of things I'll mention that I'm working on. Obviously, COVID is going to overshadow all of our efforts, not only in the process, but also what we focus on as a priority for the budget and various policies. I'm the incoming chairman of the Commerce Committee, so I'm sure I'll be working closely with you all as we try to make sure that our small businesses don't go under. A lot of them are right on the edge, have been treading water for some time. So going to be working on policies that help our small businesses. One area that impacts small businesses and our entire economy is how we deal with the passage of Prop 208. Obviously gives us one of the higher income tax rates in the country. And we're already starting to hear about businesses from other states that are not going to be relocating here any longer, or businesses here that are going to be migrating out of the state, which is not good. So we're going to be looking at how we can make sure Arizona remains competitive. I looked at your priorities booklet, and that was sort of the theme. How do we maintain our competitive, attractive place to either relocate or expand, or even just start a business in Arizona? So that'll be one of my top priorities. Dovetailing on that, I'll be looking at tax reform. I saw in your priorities an interest in reducing the disproportionate share of the property tax burden that businesses face. This is something that I did introduce last year and will bring back this year. It got tabled because of COVID. And so those are some of the priorities I'll be pushing. There'll be an interest in looking at our election system, make sure that we restore voter confidence. Whether you believe there is fraud or not, it's undeniable that many people have lost faith in the system. So we need to be cognizant of that and working to restore that. So I know we're sort of running late. I'll end it there, but looking forward to working with all of you as we try to push forward in the midst of a crazy era for the state.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you for watching the time. We have 2 minutes for each of our elected officials and community leaders. So thank you for watching that. And from Legislative District 18, we have Senator Sean Bowie. Senator?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here with you this morning. I always love being with the Chandler Chamber. I grew up as a kid in Chandler, so always great to be with all of you. I was just reelected to my third term in November. I continue to serve on the Senate Appropriations Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and also the Senate Commerce Committee. So I'm excited to get back to work on Monday. As far as priorities, COVID is obviously going to be at the top of our list, and ensuring that our cities and our schools and our small businesses are able to reopen and have the tools and the PPE and all the resources they need to gradually reopen the economy and get us through this pandemic. Along with COVID, we're also going to be looking at a couple things. Education is always at the forefront of my mind. I hear a lot of talk on this call and other business calls about having an educated workforce and growing our economy and bringing high-paying jobs to Arizona. It's difficult to do that if we're not making investments in education. We've made some progress in recent years, but we still have a long way to go, particularly around higher education. Arizona has cut more from higher education than any state in the country. Since 2008, our universities have really struggled during COVID. So my hope is we can make some additional investments in higher education in both our universities and our community colleges. The last issue that we'll be spending a lot of time on this session is voting rights and making sure that we're protecting both your voting rights and the rights of our constituents, preventing attacks against voting by mail and the permanent early voting list, and ensuring that we can continue having the robust voting system that we have here in Arizona that's worked really well in recent years. So I look forward to working with all of my colleagues and representing the city of Chandler this legislative session. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Senator. From the House of Representatives, we have Legislative District 17, Representative Jennifer Pollock.
Thank you, Elan. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you, and those that I can't see, I look forward to next year when we can do this in person. I am State Representative Jennifer Pollock, and I'm representing District 17, which is much of Chandler, West Gilbert, and Sun Lakes. I will be serving this year as ranking member of House Education, and I will also be a member of the Government and Elections Committee. Interestingly, 3 of the 4 representatives serving Chandler will be on that committee, so you will be very well represented in that area. Those of you who know me know that my passion is education. I taught for 17 years before running for office. On the Education Committee, the Democrats are going to be focused on supporting stabilizing education funding, equity and diversity, special education funding, early childhood, and then higher education and workforce development. Specific to that, we are looking at bills with CTED, which is career and technical education. We want to make sure that the students who are leaving our high schools are ready to go right into jobs. And as Senator Bowie said, we've got to look also at our higher education. We need to support these programs so that we do have a strong, educated workforce. I wanted to also bring to your attention that one cross-platform issue is broadband. We have seen with COVID that there are a lot of deficits across the state. So we need strong broadband throughout the state, not only for virtual learning and working, but also so people can access telemedicine. Quickly, I will also remind you that if you are a small business owner in need of a PPP loan, the Arizona Commerce Authority did a great webinar this week. If you missed it, you can visit their website and you can access it. It was recorded for you. So thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Representative. From Legislative District 17, Representative Jeff Wenninger.
Thank you, and thank you all for having me. Good to see everybody. Thank you to the Chamber for always putting this on. I'll jump right in it since I only have 2 minutes. Coming up in the session, I'm proud and happy to be chairman of the Commerce Committee again, my third term doing that. We will be, working on COVID, but part of working on COVID is making sure we have a healthy economy. And this liability coverage is very important. I don't know if it's going to happen at the national level, so I think we need to make sure we have it at the state level so we can protect our businesses who are doing everything right. So along with that, goes individual bills, things that have happened like telemedicine and things, and how to make sure we ingrain those, the things that have worked in state law. One thing that I will be working on and hoping to come with a compromise with is alcohol to go, which has been really good for restaurants and or bars who've had it for a while, but nobody has had the right to serve these kind of cocktails ago, whether that they were making kind of in their prep areas. And so this could be for grocery stores, bars, or restaurants. So that's something that I'm working on, going to continue regulatory reform, making sure our businesses are safe, but we're not just putting roadblocks in front of them just because that's the way we've always done it. Tax reform, as JD said, you know, with the makeup of Congress and the presidency, and this isn't a secret, they pretty much promised that they were going to raise taxes. And so if that's the case, and you combine that with Prop 208, we could have a very unattractive place to move. So Prop 208's there, and it's going to be in place, but how do we still create some attractiveness to Arizona to make sure these jobs keep expanding, and in Chandler, who's done such a great job in attracting those. I just heard about broadband and things, and you talked about people not having the internet at homes. 5G, a bill I passed a few years ago, is incredibly important to that. A lot of people who are not of means do have cell phones. And if they're not getting good access to where they can do a hotspot or something off that cell phone, that family does not have internet service at home. And we've seen what a disparity that has meant to those in need in our communities, just having the basics of attending school. So I'm proud of that bill we did a few years ago, and how it can really help as this rolls out, the people in need in our community. And lastly, I just want to say the Chamber and the Chandler Council has done such an amazing job in connecting a lot of these funds to whether it be PPP or different things, and that information, even though the Chamber didn't receive it until now, or wasn't qualified to do it. They were doing the yeoman's work of getting that done. And I thank them. And Jennings did a good brief overview, and Representative Pollock talked about it a little bit too. But I just think all of us as elected leaders need to do our best to communicate this information and these resources to our constituent businesses. And there is another thing in addition to the PPP that Jennings briefly touched on, but I think it's really important because it could really be a boon for a lot of our businesses, and that's the employee retention tax credit. There's been numerous changes to it, and some people are not going to qualify for the PPP. If you haven't had a 25% loss in a quarter of last year, then you're not going to qualify for it. But this employee retention tax credit would be a real blessing to a lot of these businesses, and it's not as high of a mark to qualify for. And I'm going to be doing my best. If anybody has any questions, please contact me. But I'm going to be doing my best to push out this information. I already have to a lot of business owners I know. And I can send some links on some articles that explains it. But it will be very, very good for our businesses. And essentially, if other businesses in competing states are able to stand their business up through this pandemic longer because they have more access and more knowledge about those things, then they're at an advantage over our state and our communities. With that, I'll wrap it up. Hopefully I'm close to 2 minutes.
Thank you, Representative. From Legislative District 18, we have Jennifer Germain. Representative?
Thank you so much, Lean, and thank you to the Chandler Chamber for having me this morning. I'm State Representative Jennifer Germain. I represent District 18, Tempe, Chandler, Mesa, and Ahwatukee. And I actually live in the Chandler portion of the district and have for over 10 years. So Chandler is my home. I love Chandler. I'm going to be the ranking member on military affairs and public safety for this upcoming legislative session. Over the last 18 months, I have been working very closely with all 71 of our law enforcement agencies and have had a great partnership, a bipartisan partnership with Attorney General Mark Brnovich, where we're really investigating what's happening with missing persons here in our state of Arizona. So I'm going to have a lot of legislation related to that work with missing persons, and some victim services reforms for our law enforcement agencies so that people who are victims of violent crime can get the services that they need, and those who are surviving family members can get reimbursements from the State Victim Compensation Fund for funeral costs and for any other counseling services that they may need to go along with that. I'm also serving on the Government and Elections Committee, and I have been working very closely with Maricopa County Department of Health to get our vaccines up and running and out into our community. And working very, very closely with businesses and providers and the Phoenix Tool Bank to make sure that our schools are safe, that everybody has access to PPE, and that we are really focusing on recovering from COVID and recovering in the right way, so that we are protecting as many people as we possibly can protect while preserving our commerce and our economy. And it's going to be an interesting legislative session. The last thing that I've really been working on is a partnership with Startup Foundation, Yes Phoenix, and the Governor's Office for grants for businesses who have started up during the pandemic. So if you have started a business during the pandemic, go on over to the Startup Foundation's website, and they launched a grant program yesterday. And it's got funding for about $2 million worth of grants for small businesses who are startup businesses during this global pandemic right here in Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative. From Legislative District 18, Mitzi Epstein.
Thank you all. Glad to be listening in today. I am the ranking member on Ways and Means. I look forward to working with Senators Bowie and Mesnard on moving our tax structures forward to help everybody have upward mobility in Arizona. Specifically, our caucus as a whole is going to focus on 4 areas: COVID relief, and that includes unemployment insurance, the contact tracing, all the health issues, and housing. Housing is going to be terribly important that we need to work on. Election protection, of course, is key. Third one is the economy and jobs. People need a way to have money in their pockets. And I think we are all supportive of that. We want to work together on that. And finally, criminal justice reform. I think that we have some bipartisan interest in a number of ways we can step forward to keep Arizonans safer and save money and actually do a much more effective job of corrections and rehabilitation and recovery. So those are our 4 overall objectives. I personally am going to be working on unemployment insurance. Our unemployment insurance program, the number one thing I'm trying to get out there is that unemployment insurance is a job creator. There are studies from the Bush administration and various others that all show that it, intuitively you can tell it stops the job loss. When people have money in their pockets, they can pay the landlord, they can make the car payment, and it stops every other place from losing jobs. So unemployment insurance must be part of our plan to help our economy going forward. I also know that we need to do an audit on the DES in the unemployment insurance program to improve efficiencies. We need to, just the folks in the health committee, as Representative Allen suggested, is not enough. We need the professionals from the audit division, the Office of the Auditor General, to go in there and help them figure out how to perform better, both for claimants and for employers. If you are an employer and you've gotten an incorrect bill from DES about unemployment insurance, please let me know. We're collecting stories on that. And we recognize that the UI program needs to improve customer service for both claimants and for employers. That's why the audit. Finally, we have to restore our unemployment insurance trust fund. It should be at about $1.2 billion, and it's down to maybe 80 million. I didn't check today. My number one laser focus is that as we restore that, I do not want our small businesses to have to pay for it. And currently, if we get a loan or something like that, if the legislature doesn't do anything, that's what's going to happen. It'll all land on small businesses paying the brunt of it. And that's not the way to help our economy. So I'm working very hard on unemployment insurance. Alcohol to go is also of an interest. I'm going to, as I love to do, take the other side of Representative Weniger's position, perhaps, but I know that we'll be able to work together on this. He's been wonderful about really finding both perspectives in the past, and I know it's going to work well again this time. But the other side of we all love the idea of I can get a drink to go from a restaurant, but for all the bars who paid $250,000 for their alcohol license, and while a restaurant paid $1,500, we have some licensing issues to figure out. And I just know we can if we all recognize the need to help all of our businesses and not just one side or the other. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun. And finally, I have to say, Christina in chat, you wrote, what's the proposed plan for dealing with Prop 208 as a small business owner? An increase of 78% will put most of us out of business. Would you please contact me? I cannot possibly fathom how this, what is actually not a 78% increase in your tax bill. Most folks from Prop 208 might go from paying about 5% of your income in taxes to 5.5% of your income in taxes. It's going to be that kind of a ballpark. And that's only on your profits. So you'll still be able to deduct all of your expenses and operate as you were before. This is only on that, on the profit section. So if you're concerned, please contact me. I'd love to talk with you. And if it really is a scare that you think you're going to go out of business, let me know, because I don't see how that's going to happen. But I need to know if that's the case. So please contact me on Prop 208 if you have any concerns. I think Arizona continues to be a low tax state for high income folks and entities. So I think that we want to be mindful of that. Obviously, we always want to watch our tax burdens and make sure that nobody is getting an unfair share. So that is, as ranking member on Ways and Means, equitable and fair tax structures that make sure our economy keeps on growing is my focus. In addition
Thank
to
you,
education,
Representative.
we have our Paula to cover that.
Thank you. And from the city of Chandler, Council Member Rene Lopez, he was in attendance, but unfortunately an emergency came up and he had to disconnect. So we're gonna move on to Council Member Matt Orlando, please.
Thank you very much. Certainly appreciate it. Chamber, thank you for all the time today. Jeff Winokur, my good friend, thank you for joining the Mustache Club. It looked good on you, my friend. Seriously, we've all talked about COVID some way or the other this week or this conference, but my focus this next 4 to 5 months will be shots in arms. How do we accelerate the plan? That's the key right now. I don't want to get ahead of the supply, obviously, but over the last few weeks, I've been discussing with not only the business community, as well as a medical facility community. As well. I had a conversation with Jack Sellers yesterday and city staff. We need to figure out how to get these shots in arms. If we don't get shots in arms, the business don't open up, schools don't get the teachers back in the classroom, and we definitely don't get the daycare centers open again. These are the key right now. And one of the issues we're facing, and I asked my friends from the legislative district, is indemnification of individuals. I was working with a 37-year veteran nurse. She couldn't give shots because she's not licensed. My wife's a medical technologist for 40 years. She can't give shots because she's not currently licensed. So how do we figure out to get these folks that are valuable commodities or valuable individuals and able to identify them, now I believe is getting enough medical personnel to give that shot in the arm. So again, I'll be working with you on that, as well as our city government, as well as our communities in the area. I've been speaking to a lot of representatives in the area. How do we take our resources and get folks inoculated, particularly in our older sections of the city, the Sunbird, the Solaris? How do we get shots to those people? Maybe need to be a mobilization effort of small mobiles instead of one centralized location. We got to be creative here, and I'll need your help, legislators, as we go through this. Workforce housing is going to be a big issue. It still is an issue with us. How do we do the downsizers to keep them in Chandler? How do I get the young career individuals or those that are in the workforce environment? How do we get them jobs? How do we get them and get them housing they can afford to stay here in Chandler? I want my kids to stay right here. I really do. I'm being selfish, I'll admit it, but I do want my kids to stay here, and we need to find that right element. Finally, retail. We have several discussions with our mall and other retails, and we need to definitely look in how we can support our small retailers, particularly the brick and mortar folks. Right now, they had a decent holiday, but again, there's going to be this lapse down there. So what do we do to get those folks engaged. And how do we help revitalize our Four Corners initiatives? And then sustainability is another big issue. How do we sustain and keep our, our environment going? I know there's a couple of questions on that today. We've got initial plans, but we need to make those more robust. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And we are going to move to Council Member Mark Stewart, please.
Hey, good morning and thank you. And thanks for everything you're doing here at the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, Chandler is a premier city, not just in Arizona, but in the United States. I mean, we are a city that wins awards, and we do that because we have a well-run city and a culture that really rewards hard work and listening to our community. I think that's the biggest reason why Chandler is as successful as it is because we are in tune with what's going on in the community, and we listen and we take action on that. I think another big thing in this is as we're moving hopefully out of this COVID crisis into the first quarter, into the second quarter of this year, is our relationship with the Chamber. Terry, I want to thank you and your team for everything you've done so far to help us distribute PPP or PPE, as well as distribute information about PPP. There's a lot of acronyms going around these days, but it's so important that our community stay vibrant and healthy economically, because that transitions us into being able to support the infrastructure changes that need to be made and updated, maintaining fiscal responsibility, because when you are fiscally responsible, you can do everything. You can take care of the homeless. You can do things where you're helping support. I think we just submitted $4.1 million to Ascend to help with rent relief and things like that. Those are things that you get to do when you have a financially responsible city like Chandler. And it's one of the reasons that we win the awards we do. It's one of the reasons that the Chamber of Commerce of Chandler also wins awards. And that relationship we will continue to strengthen because not only will that help us move forward, but it will help us embrace our community even more, because Chandler is a community that embraces unity. And we'll continue to do that. We'll focus on being one of the safest communities in the nation. And we will continue to work hard at that. I'm super excited to be working with my new colleagues, Odette Harris and Christine Ellis, and I think they'll be hopefully talking a little bit after I will. But I just want to leave you with this. Chandler will continue with the support of Mayor Hartke, and I think the remainder of council, to be a responsible community and do the right thing so that we can, so that people, when they get up in the morning to go to work, or if they have challenges, they don't have to worry about the stoplights turning on and the electricity working and the roads being safe and being safe in their household. So have a great day, and thanks for having me today, Terry. Bye.
Thank you, Council Member. We'll follow with Council Member Terry Rowe, please. Sounds like I don't have Council Member Terry Rowe. We'll wait.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Thank you.
I had a great speech there outgoing. So thank you to the Chamber for sponsoring this event. Thank you for a great partnership with the City of Chandler. I don't know the chambers of the rest of the state, but I do know that I think we have the best in Chandler. And I think we all get to talk about COVID because it's such an important issue. I know that there are some opportunities that we can learn from with COVID and maybe use for the future. And so when we talk about things like dining in the park in the downtown, I don't know if that's something that we should get rid of completely. That's if COVID ever goes away, it's the type of thing that maybe there's an opportunity for us to benefit there. And we need to take advantage of good ideas that other people in the community or the chamber have and try and work with the state and try and support our small businesses. But very importantly, we need to stay on track. We are about ready to begin another budget. And as we do that, we have a new council that will get to work on that. And we're going to work together. I know that because I've met our new council members and they're awesome. Clearly, I want to make sure that the area around the airport there's still a lot of room for development there. The downtown is kind of my baby. I love the downtown. So If there's projects we can do there, I want to do those. But let's keep taxes low. Let's keep the city moving forward. We have to continue to walk and chew gum at the same time and make sure that our city continues to have quality transportation, quality housing, and work with our school districts and have the best education. And I could go on, but thank you all very much this morning, and I'm glad we all could be together. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. And we are going to Council Member-elect Christine Ellis, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity right now to talk. As you know, I am the first Black woman on this council after a city of over 100 years old. And here we are making such great impact here in this area. How do we stand here in Chandler? We are taking the leadership from the chamber. Thank you again, Ms. Terry, for providing that platform for us to elevate ourselves from there. I am very grateful that we have organization here in Chandler that we can work with, from the like of the Salvation Army and Ascend. We heard all of that, about all of them, what they're doing. But my main focus, as the mayor had told me before, is to really know what's under the road. What that means to me is, how are we going to stand in the three things that we really, truly want to do here in Chandler? We want to live here, we want to play here, and we want to work here. Those are the areas that I'm going to look into in the 4 initiatives that I always pride myself in doing and stating prior for me being on this council. I want to work with higher education. Diversity is going to be a place right now like never before, where I'm going to have a strong voice and making sure that people understand that we are standing strong in Chandler in that area. Inclusion is important to us in order for us to move forward. With higher education, I want to be part of the conversation. I want to hear and I want to put my voice where it's going to mean something for those who want to empower themselves to become better. And then the lack of it that we have right now, as far as the personnel and people to make this thing happen, for us to keep our city healthy. It's important to me that we stay healthy as we move forward. As a group, as a team, with the council ourselves, we're gonna be working very close with each other. So we're gonna start with ourselves. It's always been told, you gotta take care of yourself first before you can take care of anybody else. So we, the council, I'm gonna look forward to that. Of us taking care of each other and moving forward in that area. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to serve the people of Chandler. I'm looking at the numbers right now. There are about 128 of you on this call. It's because you feel that this is important for you to spend your morning listening to your leaders. That's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take leaders that are empowered to move this city forward. And I believe that I'm one of them and I will continue to be. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you. And now we're going to Council Member-elect O.D. Harris, please.
Thank you and good morning. And again, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, the Chandler Chamber of Commerce, for putting on such a wonderful, excellent event. I think this is critical when you're able to get the elected officials together on one call at one time to share ideals. It really does help our community. So thank you, Terry, and your team for your leadership. The one thing that I want to make sure that I stress, let me just get back right quick. Also, thank you to the mayor and my fellow council members who I'm going to be joining the team soon. I'm looking forward to joining that team, and I'm excited about working with each one. We each have a great relationship with each other, and so I'm super excited about working with my colleagues. But a few of the things that I am proud about, I am proud to let everyone know that I'm going to be joining some committees in Chandler, like public safety, community service, economic development, neighborhood resources, cultural development, and I will be serving on the airport commission. So I'm really excited about that and what that's going to do for our city. Some of my issues that's at top priority, along with Council Member Terry Rowe, the airport is going to be a thing that I really do want to go, because there's a lot of economic development in that area, and it's a driving force that we can really build up in our community. but also I want to talk about affordable housing. As my state colleagues spoke on, affordable housing is such a critical thing, and we find solutions to help people live, work, and play in Chandler workforce housing. Also, COVID-19 as it pertains to how it impacts our businesses, our seniors. And so many of our residents are also, they've been faced with evictions due to lower hours or maybe job closing altogether. And I want to continue for the council to be a strong force in the area. Right before a break happened, current council members, they were able to pass over $4.1 million to provide to Ascend and Salvation Army to make sure our residents stay in their houses. And there's still some funding there. All you have to do is reach out to Ascend or Salvation Army. Lastly, I want to make sure that we are a city that is diverse, and we need to make sure that diversity is included in our city government, in our city leadership, in our government. Also, we need to look at that from a community perspective, and are we allowing diverse opportunities to happen in our city? And as council, are we making sure that those opportunities are being spread among everyone? So I'm very much interested in diversity and inclusion. As you guys know, Martin Luther King holiday is coming up. Black History Month is coming up, and that's very important. And lastly, Proposition 207 has passed, and the continuing evolving of that proposition is going to be critical moving forward. And I'm looking forward to working with my state colleagues and my local colleagues to make sure that we are doing what we can to make sure that we are representing our whole community in the way they would like to be represented. So other than that, I want to thank you for your time. And again, thank you to Terry and the Chandler Chamber of Commerce and your team for all you guys are doing. And thank you.
Thank you. And okay, Dr. Castile from the Chandler Unified School District got called away to an emergency meeting, and she extends her apologies. And we are going to move to Kyrene School District Superintendent Laura Torches.
I am 5 days in on the job here. So I joined Kyrene. I've been in Kyrene for about 5 years, but took over as superintendent at the start of the new school year. So I appreciate the Chamber hosting this event and inviting us to share a little bit about what's going on in Kyrene right now. As everyone we've heard on the call today, really our most urgent priority right now is still addressing the ongoing challenges that we're facing with COVID, including some of our budget challenges that we've been up against. But we are really, really encouraged that we just got notification about the rollout of the phase 1B vaccination. So we are hoping that is going to be moving quickly for us to get our teachers and our staff protected so we can get our kids back in school more consistently. We are also pulling together teams right now to start really focusing on what are the needs we're going to be able to address of students, both academically and social emotional, when we do get back in school. We anticipate there's going to be some things that pop up that none of us had ever even expected from what's happened during these closures and all of the response to the pandemic. So we're working really hard, such things as even our summer programming, but pulling teams together to have a really comprehensive wraparound support plan for our students. And even though we're focusing on these short-term challenges, we haven't lost sight of our long-term priorities, and two big priorities that have been on our plate, both very, very close to my heart. I've worked closely with both of these, is that we've been continuing to look at opportunities to be innovative in what our 21st century learning environments look like. And if you haven't had a chance to go on our website or look at our Spark School of the Future, I'm really excited that we are starting to expand that after being in operation for 3 years. We're going to go to, we're expanding by a grade level. It is really an innovative way to look at our learning environments, how we cohort children together. It's actually 100 to 120 students all in one class with a team of teachers, a team of educators that are supporting. So we're really excited. We've been getting national recognition, other state departments wanting to come look, and of course, state recognition. And then the other one that's really close to my heart is our work around equity. We jumped into that work around inclusion and inequity a few years ago. The pandemic slowed down some of our professional development, but we are continuing behind the scenes doing a lot of that, and we're going to stay committed to that so that we can really continue to address our strategic plan priorities that we have built in there. So those are our two big priorities that we continue to work on while we're still addressing the pandemic. And although we know it's been unprecedented times, 2020, I anticipate some of that still in 2021. We are really confident that we have created, students that are innovators, problem solvers, teachers, leaders, and that we are going to bounce back very strongly. So we're very excited. Look forward to meeting with some of you in person, hopefully, and continue this relationship. So thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Congratulations, Superintendent. 5 days. Wow, what a fabulous group. It's going to truly be an exciting year. In addition to those who have shared with us this morning, we're honored to recognize many of our other leaders that are on the call today. We have representatives from the governor's office. We have Interganala with the Office of U.S. Senator Kirsten Sinema. We have Central Arizona Project Tammy Watson, House of Representatives John Kavanaugh and Charlene Fernandez, along with Arizona Corporation Commission newly elected Chair Leah Marquez Peterson, Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, school governing boards from Chandler Unified, Kyrene, Mesa, and Tempe. We have Jason Olive from CUSD, Laura Brunner with CUSD, as well as Lindsay Love from CUSD. And from Kyrene, we have Wanda Komalchik and Margaret Wright and Kevin Walsh. We have also, those of them, please visit our website because we have videos that they have shared some messages for you that will live on. Also, any of our electeds that have not provided a video, if you send us a video on your priorities, we will keep that posted on our website as we move forward. So thank you again for being here. And please take a moment to, after the program, to visit our website at thatchandlerchamber.com. And you can view those updates from these tremendous community leaders. It has been a great way to meet and hear from some of our representatives who are really advocating for us in this coming year. And thank you to all of the individuals who worked so diligently to make Chandler and Arizona a better place. And I'd like to do a shout out again to our sponsors. They're listed in your book because without them, we would not be able to make these programs possible. And finally, in closing, we hope that you will be able to join us for our regular Public Policy Impact Series, which will be on February 12th. And we will have the Arizona Chamber will be joining us and giving us updates on what is happening there. So please go ahead and register on that. Let's work together to make 2021 session productive and successful for all of Chandler and Arizona. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.